Water is life. Lead pipes are a grave concern across the whole country. Most Canadian officials don't know where to start in replacing lead pipes, so the responsibility is on ourselves to take action. As we have seen in recent news that there's high levels of lead running through our taps and warnings even into pheno for boiling before consuming. For many cities, rain is a plentiful resource and should be recognized as precious. Much like a river or ocean's landscape, all these pinpoints across the world paint a view of the potential reach for this collaboration of need, art, and science. During my studies and observations, I managed to collect 3.5 liters of rainwater in just a few hours of rainfall within an extra large mixing bowl right on my balcony. While researching precedents of rain collectors, private, public, and city systems, I discovered many fabulous inventions, yet most of them did not have any filtration system built into its basic form. For Indigenous natives and earth keepers, water sources are considered holy. Water is sacred, and especially here to the Coast Salish people, water is ceremony and represents the interconnectedness of all life, the giver of life. With respect to these ancient ways, I've turned to the footprint and stature of a totem architecture, which could be scaled down to suit home use or scaled up for a community fixture. I do feel it's important for me to express a recent pivot point, which was rooted from prototyping personal balcony units. The initial thought process and research brought me to where I am now thinking of growing into more of a communal fountain. Going into my materials, hempcrete has been what I found to be the most curious and exciting material to use for this design. With just a few ingredients and some mixing, we have not only a durable and sustainable material, but it also acts as a carbon sink, giving back to nature in its humble place. If the hemp fibers are shaved down to a fine, the finished appearance could also be made quite refined and beautiful. The filtration process was provoked from a discussion stemming traditional water filters using diatom ceramic vessels and a blossoming discovery within nanotechnology. We have been using ceramics to filter bacteria from our water sources since the early 1800s. Plasma and ceramics, however, make a unique combination for creating a filter that would rarely ever need to be changed. Clay dust, sawdust, and plasma all mixed together, molded, and fired will burn away the sawdust, leaving a porous ceramic form. The rainwater would then come into contact with the powerful plasmic components penetrated through the filter as the water passes through. This is an overview view of nanomaterials and what GANs is in terms of matter. Collectively bringing certain GANs together in a particular order generates a series of filters that clears the water but also mineralizes it into healthy, beneficial water. To make your own GANs, here is what the basic setup looks like for each material. The Quiche Foundation is an open source educational resource that offers lectures, studies, and links to many interesting setups such as these that are swiftly being shared across the world. Taking all the basic material to process your filters, this would be a step-by-step guide. In most cases, all your supplies are readily available and will not harm anybody if used respectfully. So ready to test are the following variations of molds that I'm also currently making additional ones in varying thicknesses, etc. I have played with many adaptations of the overall form of the rain collector itself. Wishing I could have slotted in a picture of my most recent ceramic prototype, I've experimented with capturing rain in a leaf-like structure that reaches off a balcony with a flex hinge, allowing the overflow to simply fall out of the pedal if it gets too full or if there's no longer room left in the reservoir. So the finishing details, the spirit of water. Since 1999, Dr. Masaru Emoto has led scientific experiments where he exposes water in glasses to different words, pictures, music, and then freezing and examining the aesthetic properties of the resulting crystals using microscopic photography. I would like the details of these studies to be illustrated using relief molds and carvings on the body of the whole rain collector. So moving forward, testing a variety of material combinations and qualities of the filter is definitely my next step. Hopefully having Health Canada's participation, full-scale prototypes of the rain collector, and sharing the resources for expanding and sharing the technology and design, making a decision on whether it's a community installation or a personal use.
And Alan, maybe you want to jump in.
Sure. This was really cool to see, both from a science perspective, but also an art perspective, because obviously for me, with my background in water science, often we're like, whatever. You know what? We'll worry about the shell of it later. So it's really cool to see how critical that is as you're tying it together. I'm curious, actually, a little bit more of a market question, but can you tell me a little bit about the market for rainwater capture? Like, where are you looking? And also, what's out there? And then, is it the fact that you're bringing this new aesthetic look to the table, or is it that the filter itself is doing something that filters aren't currently doing?
Yeah, so definitely this project is a two-part. There's the aesthetic functioning of the whole form, and definitely from an artistic perspective, industrial design and sculpture. And then there's the second part, which is the filter. So in all honesty, the filter itself came in the stumbling of just knowing that I wanted to come up with a rain collector, and also living in an apartment myself, I thought, well, I want to be able to collect water, and I don't have the luxury of a garden or an open space. So initially, that's where I started the project, was how can I make something, design something that will fit on my balcony, that would have a reach across or off the balcony without hitting any overhangs from the building or foliage. So I kept hitting these restrictions, and until I started opening it up to realize that this could very well be a community meeting point. It could be more open to just a general, even if it was outside the school, people filling up their water bottles on their way in. So it became sort of I'm actually at a point where it can go either way. So in a commodity level, definitely as a product design, it would be very useful in a home use. There would be some areas of strata. I thought that I would hit some hurdles around that, just because there's areas of how that would change the effects of the overall look of an apartment building. But then, yeah, so I hope that I've answered your question. I think there was more to it, but yes, I think it could be either way, and I'm at that point where I'm very open to the feedback.
First of all, I loved hearing that background story, because this innovation started from a problem. I mean, we oftentimes comes across, solutions looking for problems to solve, but this actually started from a problem where you wonder yourself, how do I collect the rainwater? So that I really like hearing that background story. Sort of on the design and materials perspectives, I noticed that you mentioned that, these are available materials so you can just source and kind of just build it yourself and so on. I thought that was brilliant from the perspectives that, you're bootstrapping this, you're building this yourself, you're not doing something that is so sophisticated that you would need, getting additional fundings or whatever before you even get that proof of concept. So I think you're in that inflection point right now where you've come up with a design, you know that this is something that's going to work. You don't know who's the customers yet. You don't know if that's going to be the city, if it's going to be in the community, or it's going to be at the home level where, anyone can just purchase this and put this in their apartments, and how many people are in the apartments that, would actually want this. So I think you're in that inflection point now where you have this idea, this could be a product. So now you got to go out there in the market and see who can be your customers, who's going to be paying for the products, and how's the business model is going to look like. And no one can answer that. I can't answer that. The only people that can answer that is actually your customers. So you got to go out there and survey and look at what people want and where that majority of, well, I guess the payers and the customers would be, and seeing how you can kind of go from there. If it's going to be parts, the community, the city, maybe then you can loop in some of the assistance or help from the city and so on. But my advice in going about to really launch this is to get as much help as you can and resources. There's a lot of available resources out there, whether it's going to be non-dilutive fundings, if it's going to be accelerator programs or anything like that, to kind of just get started. So yes, that would be my advice.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just touch on that by saying that it definitely, I think a lot of us, especially even Vancouver, we look at rain as just being so plentiful, and we can turn our shower taps on. In fact, I didn't have hot water in my building earlier this morning, and I really just felt that. But yeah, I think that we don't realize that our watersheds could be really under pressure, and many things can happen in a moment's notice. So to have these kind of ideas sort of percolating is a great social discussion as well.
We've got to wrap
Thank
this one, but if you have we have a couple minutes, George, if you want to, yeah.
Just maybe really quickly, great comments, and I love this. I think Alan said this at the start, the climate change and I would say even water issues in some respects are challenging because they can feel so intangible. The river's polluted, but it's so far, it's so big, how do I get a hold of that? You've got something that brings that home to people. What's interesting about, just a kind of a comment on potential applications, is we forget sometimes that the cumulative impact of a lot of these decisions can be quite large. So from a city perspective, from a utility perspective, as in like the sewerage utility, not utility, philosophical concept, there's actually a lot of use to having a lot of rainwater capture at the same time. It helps us protect our sewers from being overflowing. There's a whole variety of benefits that are associated with that. So there is a business case potentially on the level of the public side in preventing too much water from entering at one time and as also cleaning that water. There's a giant cistern under Olympic Village that is actively cleaning the water and spitting it out into False Creek, cleaning that water before it even touches the ocean. That's a gigantic ecological and social benefit that's being provided. You've got a kind of distributed model of that. So think about this in its aesthetic opportunities, in its personal consumption opportunities, and in its kind of community and ecological resilience capacities. Because I think there's use cases for each of those, and if you can find a kind of triple word score of that, then you're in business.
Just like to add one short comment, I think maybe I missed it, but I think you say you tackle a problem, but I think you went very quick through the problem, and why should I care? I think there's obviously something, but to maybe put it in perspective, the water shortage, or why is that important, to very push out your problem. This is the problem. This is what I'm solving, and this is how I'm going to solve it, and then obviously work out the finances.
Okay, I'm going to be really quick too, but I'm really passionate about water filtration. So listening to this, I felt like I had a little bit maybe
Water
more.
snob?
Yeah, it's really good. But so what I felt that was really unique about your pitch, I actually don't think you need to involve the lead pipes that much, because I think it distracts from the bigger possibilities. I think your unique proposition is catching rainwater in an apartment, because I'm in the same circumstance. I think that developing the aesthetics is also another great part about your idea, but the water filtration is such a big industry already. You've probably heard of Berkey and stuff, that you may not want to even tackle that market. Maybe a partnership with one of them would be a better idea, and focus on collecting in apartments. That's really good.